In the previous video, we looked at the circular flow, and we looked at how we can measure the size of our economy based on national income, so the money that we make, or the expenditure approach, which looks at spending, how we spend that money to buy goods and services. Now, when we talk about national income and GDP with the expenditure approach, we're looking at a point of equilibrium. We're at that moment in time, the economy is not growing or shrinking, so our national income is equal to our expenditures. In order for this to be true, we have to deal with a bit of a challenge, which is, what do you do about houses? Now, we talked before about when a new house is built, it's part of investment spending because a business pays other businesses to build it. But what do you do about buying a house that's already been built? Okay, how do we deal with that? Well, the challenge with housing is that, well, what if we all decided to rent each other's houses? So we're all going to leave the house we currently live in and we're going to rent from someone else. Well, in that case, we are now paying money to that person you're renting a house from, and their income has increased. Okay, so their income has increased and our spending has increased. Now, does this indicate to us that the economy has grown if we've all just traded houses? Well, it doesn't mean that the economy has grown any, it just means that we're all not living at home. Our spending has gone up, but then so has our income. So how do we deal with this? Well, we do what is called imputing rent. So when Statistics Canada determines GDP, okay, so they're looking at GDP, they assume that everyone is renting. Even if you have a home that you built and you've paid off, we assume that you're renting it from yourself. This allows then for us to look at equilibrium where the income and the expenditures are equal. By just assuming that everyone's renting, even if you might be renting for yourself, then we don't see a decline in GDP or the economy shrinking just because people decide to live in their own home. So this allows us to look at equilibrium where our income is equal to our spending. Well, what if our income is not equal to our spending? So when our income is not equal to our spending, the economy is either growing or shrinking. In equilibrium, if we look at that circular flow diagram, we have our household, we had firms, we had our factor market, and we had our product market, our very simple circular flow. And then we talked about our leakages and our injections. So remember, the leakages are anything that is not going directly from the household to the firm. So in this case, we're talking about the fact that money takes a detour. So leakages would be your savings, net taxes, and imports. This is where money leaves the household but doesn't go directly to the business. And then we have injections. That's where money goes to the firm but didn't come directly from the household. So investment spending, government spending, and net exports. If we are in equilibrium, the amount of money that's going out is equal to the amount of money coming back in. So our leakages are equal to our injections, and that way we can measure national income, and we'll find it's the same as GDP. So if the economy is not growing or shrinking, national income equals GDP, leakages equal injections. Well, what if they don't equal? If there are more, so if investment spending, government spending, and export spending is more than savings, net taxes, and imports, that means that we are injecting more than is leaking, and so the economy is growing. If instead we are not spending our money because we're saving it, or we're paying it to the government in taxes, or it's leaving the country entirely in terms of imports, if this leakage is more than the money being injected into our economy by business spending, government spending, spending by other countries, so exports, if our leakages are more than our injections, then the size of our economy is shrinking. For a visualization of this, please see the next video. So what we've been looking at is how do we measure the size of the economy? We know equilibrium, where we're not growing or shrinking. And then we can look at how do we know when we are growing, how do we know when we're shrinking, and what do we do about it? But before we dive into more of those topics, what we should look at is some of the challenges associated with measuring GDP. So when you're using the national income approach or the expenditure approach to measuring the size of the economy, there are some challenges with doing so. Please see the video after the next one for that.